Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order, Last Days of Europe as the US of A. Now, in the last video, we finished up the midterms, and we had a pretty substantial increase in NPP seats. 23 compared to 29 Republicans, 38 Democrats, 9 far-right NPPs. We have some action going on in Madagascar, which we'll see what ends up happening there. Africa. We can help more our Anglo buddies out more if we want to, but I'm going to hold off on that for now. RFK Madagascar is 1. Martha Smith had been counting the days since her son had gone off to Russia, that land so wild and untamed, brimming with slobbering tyrants and bloodthirsty bandits. She had not heard a word from him in months since his last letter, even as the great land was being brought to heel by half a dozen such tyrants now left. Their states established bonds with the land of the free. She still didn't get so much of a word of news on the state by her boy. Now, as she marched off another tally in the secret journal hidden under her bed that she was sure Ernest didn't know about, she placed her head in her hands and began her tearless sobbing. She had simply won out by the first month after she began that nightly routine. Gulping down a glass of water on her nightstand, she slid the journal back under her bed. Ernest was working late, or so she had been told, so she decided that the hours between his call from work at 7 o'clock to his return home to her grief. Her suffering was cyclical, as she awaits closure that simply would never come. Ernest was not working late. Clearing trash off a dashboard of the old beat-up truck, he searched for the letter he received last time he was working late, scouring the old maid for any news from Russia about his son. He had found only one scrap of closure after an endless night searching for something to placate his suffering wife. A communique from a Russian citizen from a city called Harbin, writing to an American cousin about how he had seen an American pass through. That was it. Apart from the few letters he'd gotten, that was all that was left of his son in paper. The famously stoic, hard-working man cast the letter aside as it was stained with tears, and laid his head on the steering wheel to cry. His journey never ended for those who loved him. What now? The 15 riders gathered at the Gray House Terminal in Washington, D.C., waiting for the next bus. It had been years since the first Freedom Riders had stood there, knowing that they would be placing themselves at risk as they traveled into the segregated South. And troubles had followed their forebears every step of the way. Arrests in Virginia, the Carolinas, and Mississippi before the horrendous beatings and arson attacks by the Klan in Alabama. A black man in his 30s turned to a nervous white woman in her 20s, fidgeting next to him. "Nervous?" The woman nodded. "Hi, I got the training and everything, but nothing really prepares you for what you see on the news." "No, it doesn't prepare you. Not all the way, at least," the man replied somberly before offering a burn-scarred hand. "Name's Marlowe. Ask me anything. It's not my first time on a freedom ride." The woman gingerly took Marlowe's hand. "April," she mouthed. She tried not to look at the scars. "Why'd you come back?" Marlowe looked at his hands. "The first time was scary, I know. Even if you know what you're doing the right thing." He looked at the 12 people waiting alongside him. "But after my first ride, I knew I had to come back for our brothers and sisters, fighting the good fight. We were never meant to travel alone." I'll lower construction costs, actually. We don't need it to be that high. For what feels like the first day in a long time, people are finally starting to breathe a little easier in the White House. The police investigation of the RD's headquarters break-in has concluded, and while the identity of the burglars has yet to be known, the concern was less who they wore and more what they might have taken. While a number of file cabinets were ransacked during the breaking, a cross-reference of indexes revealed that hardly any files were missing. The only ones that were gone relate to some re-election campaign strategies for 64, and those thankfully contain no mention of certain stunts pulled during the last election. The present paranoia that the MPP were just as ruthless as feared is beginning to dissipate, allowing him and his staff to once again focus on the state of a nation and more important matters. This chapter of Nixon administration has been closed, for now at least, and it must stay that way. Got some base bleed, beautiful. We'll get some more artillery going, and then helicopters. What? We'll get some attack helis going. The first fallen domino. We'll do Operation Cuckoo. The resistance will be more prepared to launch a coup if need be. Well done, gentlemen. Alright, let's work on... Let's break open the caches. Or caches, however you want to say it. England has no shortage of disillusioned civilians willing to trade their lives for the matrimony's right-wise freedoms. Similarly, America has no shortage of guns. Pistols, machine guns, factory-fresh M14s, leftover Steins from the Second World War, perhaps an armored Carter III in a warehouse, and their corresponding ammunition. What, one may ask, will an assemblage of angry men do with the weapons brought free of charge from the land, which is only too many to ask for itself? The answer may surprise. After all, a free England expects creativity out of her every fighting tar. There we go. Let's check in on England, speaking of. They're working on taking the Midlands. I think it's a pretty good idea from what I recall. Yeah, winning with Wingate. Good for them. CSR versus Siberian Black. Up. There goes Maurice. Novosibirsk versus Altai. I know a court justice is supposed to die sometime this year, so I'm waiting for that to happen. Magadan versus Amur. Oh, Christ. Okay, first off, let's get working on some hollow coins. There we are. This morning, the press offices of the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Washington Post, San Francisco Chronicle, Boston Globe, and half a dozen other newspapers of repute received the same anonymous package. Inside were a group of photocopies detailing how the Nixon campaign and the FBI conspired to wiretap political opponents during the 1960 election. Needless to say, the outrage from the NPP was imminent and fierce. George Wallace took to national television in the afternoon in an interview upon the front steps of the Alabama Capitol, in which he looked to the cameras and called President Nixon a corrupt crook, and concluded with demands that he resign at once. The White House and RD National Convention have claimed up for the time being, refusing to issue a statement to the press about the document's origins or veracity. While keeping their heads low and letting it blow over may have worked in the past with minor scandals, something as broad as this is simply too massive to ignore. The press, the public, and especially the NPP will not tolerate Nixon's silence for much longer. Deny everything. Brrr! Okay, so we have 7 expertise right now. Jesus. That's not nice. Look at civilian spending even more. Pay off that debt even more. Terror for the sake of love. Break open the caches. Yeah, there we go. Next, let's work on opening the black market, I guess. The Reich's New Order has unleashed many travesties upon the world, but chief among them is legitimizing base hatred as an alternative to the Enlightenment's liberating principles. By now, a whole generation of Europeans have been taught that free will and the rights of man are assumptions rather than the principal axioms which they are. Fascism's stain on Europe's ancient societies will linger for decades before it fades away, if it ever fades away. But no volume of Nazi indoctrination can excise man's impulse to seek the illicit, the unknown made alluring by its forbidden nature. how far the world has strayed to become a decency is merely an exotic import to the Reich citizenry, but they yearn for it regardless. America will give them however much they wish to consume through Brittany's unfettered ports. There we go. Novosibirsk is doing fairly well. PRC is going after the anarchist. Okay. Though I think Tomsk might beat them to the punch. Chikagi's been elected. Novosibirsk seems like an interesting one. For the first time since information on the wiretap leaked to the press, President Nixon has called a press conference in the ballroom of Washington's Mayfair Hotel. The press obviously eager to hear his comments on the scandal drive in droves. The questions, many of which focus on the wiretaps, were biting and intrusive, but Nixon handled them with the skill of a master debater. He danced around the questions with such grace that plenty of people seemed to overlook they never gave a direct answer at all. He changed topics, he spun yarns, he equivocated, but even all of his skills couldn't stop the question of the wiretaps from coming up again and again. Finally, he decided to confront one reporter's question of, to what extent would you cooperate with a federal investigation to the possibility of a cover-up head-on? After a lengthy non-answer on the values of liberty and egalitarianism, he concluded with, I will cooperate, and in fact welcome this sort of investigation. I have never attempted to cover up a crime or obstruct justice, because I have committed no crimes to cover up. This investigation will tell the American people what they need to know, whether or not the president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. That will be all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, that's not going to age very well, will it? I'll do Operation Jewel. Work on stabilizing Iberia. How is our stability? It could use some help. Let's work on stabilizing them. First, let's increase their budget. Operation commenced. Best of luck to them. National focus. Operation commenced. Let's integrate the support. With the certitude of Americans' clandestine presence in steel curtains, edges emerges familiarly between the CIA and their contacts in England and Norway. Their operation in turns have improved in both tempo and effect, as arms shipments adopt tight schedules without authorities' notice, and agents slip in and out of Fortress Europe with revolving doors ease. The two countries' resistance asks Washington's leave to form closer with the company. For his part, Nixon recalls the OSS's legendary exploits in its short-lived record. He believes a well-supported attempt to replicate its success deserves his full support. Well, there we go. How is Magadan doing? Pretty well, actually. Wow. That's better than I've seen them do before. I wonder if we're going to get the Republic of West Alaska making a cameo. We'll do survival training. So that'll be very important when we send our boys over to South Africa. And then from here, how are our tanks doing? We'll do that. Operation success. There we go. J. Edgar Hoover strode into Nixon's private office in room 180 of a State, War, and Navy building, not even stopping to knock. Dick. The files got out. Nixon's eyes darted up from his paperwork. What? The files got out? You don't mean Nixon stood up and walked over to Hoover, silently gesturing for Rosemary to pause the tape recorder. You don't mean the blackmail files, do you? Hoover solemnly nodded. How the hell did this happen? Blah! I thought you had them all burned! As I did, Dick. But that doesn't change what's on the front page of the Post. Well, who did you hand it off to? They must have done it. Hoover shrugged. Could have been one of them, or it could have been someone who snatched the files off their desk and went for a smoke break. It's amazing how much damage being left alone with a copy for 2 minutes can do. Nixon glared at Hoover's response. Of course, I'll investigate the matter fully and try to prevent any further information leaks in the meantime, Mr. President. He'd better. The next leak will be his letter of resignation. Ugh. Not nice. Who was cheated at war with? Just a more. Nope, Magadan 2 now. Okay. Good to know. I spoke too soon, and that's good to know. It keeps you humble. We'll integrate the support. Let's go working on our friends in the Philippines. In a submarine flight from the Philippine Islands, MacArthur had consigned 80,000 American and Filipino soldiers to a forlorn hope in the Corregidor Islands. Only a fraction escaped the infamous Death March, but they numbered enough to form capable nuclei for a quilt of guerrilla bands spread across the old colony. The communiques they have delivered since contact was reestablished spoke of nothing less than an impotent government ground down by both U.S. Army remnants and a homegrown communist insurgency. Nixon wasted no time granting CIA a blank check for funneling supplies to the colonies to America's stay-behind forces in its erstwhile colonies. It's high time, he believes, that America rewards loyalty and restores hope by fulfilling an old man's promise. There we go. We got that. That's a graphical glitch, I can already tell. That's not good. Well. It was Iberisk going after those guys. It wasn't clear how the bomber managed to acquire a uniform, nor how he managed to smuggle his bag through the security checkpoint without getting searched. But no matter how it happened, the result was still the same. A man disguised as a dock worker managed to sneak a duffel bag with a firebomb onto the deck of the IJN carrier Shinano, where it exploded last night. It could only be described as miraculous. No soldiers or dock workers were killed, but 3 Japanese sailors and an American fireman suffered serious burns during the explosion and subsequent attempt to put it down. The American government is apologetic with rage, with their ambassador describing the bombings as all but an act of war, and presenting a long list of demands which they likely drafted some time ago and were waiting for the opportunities of reparation. Most notable are a massive increase in security around the port, all in America's dime, of course, and a televised apology from Nixon himself. Nixon, needless to say, refused to let things go over that poorly. He's reached out through each diplomatic black channel to get the Japanese to avoid making a public release, insisting that he can make a deal that satisfies everyone while saving face. Gentlemen, please, let's not be too hasty. Blah. Magadan is taking out the fascists. Now let's see how they do against the monarchists. Oh, the Nazis. They still technically are fascists. Fairfax confirmed contact with following Filipino rebel organizations: the National Liberation Movement, the Anti-Japanese National Army, and the Bangsamoro Islamic Liberation Front. Initial discussion will fall all promising. Intelligence shared with Fairfax is considered to be a priority of the state in Boniface. Full intelligence sharing has not yet been forthcoming, but we are confident in our ability to build trust with the sources. Fairfax confirmed that anti-Japanese actions on the part of multiple groups are extremely likely to be engaged in the future. Potential for the near provision of weapons and financing is clearly evaluated by Fairfax. Looks like those rebel groups are going on the warpath. Reserve with some money. But we'll go for the fighting Filipinos. The armed forces of the Far East announced its downfall not with a whimper, but with a defiant roar. Harkening to the revolutionary spirit of the Philippines' not too distant past, Rizal Bonifacio Aguinaldo. The candor and zeal with which an army of born warriors promised their oppressors due to reckoning and lit flames with every free man from Manila to New York. The words themselves struck chills into every turncoat's chthonic backs, dreading in their silent moments the doom they were owed. Langley's contacts reported rumblings of activity from the mountains and jungles just this morning. Perhaps the Siga Nig Batan will resound a second time in the coming days. I have no idea what that is, but I'll agree with that, sure. That'll work out. What's our black arms trading looking like? Light, even though, you know, we haven't fucking done anything to trade it. We'll fight in the influence now, see what happens. Oh, there we go, the Welsh, their whole democracy thing. Fucking Canada won. Who cares about that? That's embarrassing. We're not talking about that. Barber shops, churches, drugstores, and groceries. From the bustling streets of Jackson to the quiet, stricken towns of Delta, black people in Mississippi are going to the polls. On the ballot is Aaron Henry, pharmacist and activist, for governor. Ed King, a white minister who's still recovering from a traffic accident that shattered his jaw, will be his lieutenant. Every voter knows that their ballot will have no power. That's not the point. The point is to make a statement to Mississippi blacks that voting is possible, and to make a statement to the world that there is currently no such thing as democracy in Mississippi. More than 80,000 people will cast their votes in the 1963 Freedom Ballot, several times more than are registered to vote in the entire state. It won't end segregation or voter discrimination. White civil servants will put on their suits tomorrow and quiz prospective voters on inane things and deny them their franchise. But they'll do it with a harsh light shining on them from the outside. And years from now, when names like Fannie Lou Hamer are in books of history, some astute students will see this as a beginning. Not a final triumph, but the striking of a match. Just like the river. I've been running ever since. Andrew's mutiny began as it started. Ooh. Adolf Hitler is dead. The being who claimed and secured homage is virtually a living god, has proven to be as mortal as his lowliest subjects. He now belongs to history. Church bells could be heard ringing across the Reich as the news broke. Adolf Hitler, supreme ruler of the Third Reich, passed away at age 73 in his Berghof residence in Bavaria. Previous CIA reports indicated that his health had been failing in recent years, but the cries of the past years seemed to have done him in for good. In America and much of the world, the mood is in stark contrast to that of Germany. Spontaneous celebrations broken out in Washington, in New York, in the South, in the West, all across the country. Even in the occupied ports of LA and San Francisco, American workers and Japanese soldiers agree that Hitler's death is something worth celebrating. Publicly, Nixon has not commented, but privately he's been reported as elated. However, it does appear that Hitler was the sole figure holding the crumbling Reich together. The NSA has already intercepted numerous communiques from within Germany indicating that conflict is imminent. Sic Semper Tyrannis. Approved attack. We got a lot of shit done. Research-wise, wow. How about light aircraft? I don't even know what to do. I guess we'll do drop tanks. Armor. Maybe we'll do armor. What else? Probably some field hospitals. Well, so far so jolly. Increase the budget to $500 million. There's the Civil War. Yep. It is thus necessary that the that the individual should finally come to realize that his own ego is of no importance in comparison with the existence of a nation. Adolf Hitler, and so it begins. Burgundy versus the French state. Ooh, that's not looking good for Magadan. Franco-Burgundian War. By the way, I'm not gonna bother with this because I think I'm pretty sure it's flat out just tagged, or like it's doomed to fail, from my understanding. But we have something else to worry about in a few days. So, for now, we'll strike the match. Behind a forgotten Yogyakarta alleyway, a haggard bar worker drags deep from a lit cigarette. With its glowing red and wispy gray trails with smoldering ash, looks like a small inferno set against the inky black sky. His other hand fingers a small package wrapped in used newspaper. A bundle of wires protrude from a hole gouged out of Premier Sukarno's head. On a rice paddy outside Cebu City, a farmer wrapped in blood-red cloth douses a bale of rice stalks with lighter fluid. He eyes the full moon in between empty Zippos. Tonight, a field of stars accompanies its wand tonight. His comrades are lucky this evening. In a night this bright, even a blind man from the hilltop miles away can spot a pillar of smoke. In a derelict apartment in downtown Darwin, a plainclothes tunes her AM radio to an unused frequency. Her training ears scour through the static for strings and numbers that will set 1,000 islands alight. All we have to do is light the match. Scorpion is splitting up. Ooh. Hans Speidel in Germania. Her most loyal resistance is going after these bastards. Some political theorists believe that ideas are a top-down phenomenon. They start in the minds of politicians and think tanks, who then use the media to spread them, and then they percolate in the minds of the people. Other things that's bottom-up. As they gain momentum among the common folk, as they gain more popularity, the message bubbles upwards and reaches those with actual political power and the ability to shape policy. But whether it's top-down, bottom-up, or merely a case of great minds thinking alike, though the RODs would consider it fools seldom differ, both the NPP politicians and their constituents are calling for the beginning of impeachment procedures against President Nixon. If they began, he would be the first president to be impeached since Andrew Johnson, nearly a century prior. But that's not what concerns Nixon. He's well aware that his rivals have little love for him, and the projected effects on his 64 re-election bid are currently minimal. What he fears is not what the NPP is saying, but the fact that some of the RDs are starting to listen. Let's hope this can still blow over. Expansion to Africa. Alright, we're having these guys start to break back out. Their little expansions. The English Civil War begins. We obviously know who to root for. Hidden heroes. We can confirm the blast of the Gaiety Theater killed at least 11 people, and dozens more were injured. Most of the dead were local elites, business owners, city councilors, at least one congressman, and so forth. Lengthy contacts in country have confirmed that our supplies and cash helped in the operation. Nixon takes a long breath. He's gotten used to this business. It helps that the victims are just strangers lying mangled countless thousands of miles away instead of right in front of him. McNamara pauses for just a moment, noticing the reaction, but continues. The police lockdown and bomb damage will also screw with Manilans for quite a while, further building resentment Furthermore, our contacts are noting that local Filipino papers are talking about Japanese security aid and economic enslavement. The overall damage is furthering the sentiment that the Philippines is a damaged vassal and not a free nation of its own right. Good. Strongly recommending that we continue with the program. They are indeed. I assumed as much. They have my authorization to carry on. Thank you, Mr. President. Now on to the next item. Every fight for freedom has a butcher's bill. So reserves will lose some money. But I will pay off more of that debt. There's the Ostland War. Not correct. We weakened the garrison, so they should have a better shot. So we'll see who ends up prevailing in Serbia. Africa. I have a feeling we're going to want to slow down soon. There we are. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The Republic of South Africa declares war on the Boer Republic. Norwegian has ended. Violence erupted across South Africa today as the Boer Republic, angered as what they perceived as an endless attack on themselves by the South African government, formally declared its independence from the Republic of South Africa. Accompanying the declaration, Boer militias, carrying out mostly German armaments, have spread out across the Orange Free State, however you say it, and numerous other parts of northwestern South Africa, coming into armed conflict with South Africa's soldiers stationed in the area. This conflict currently continues to escalate. Currently unknown what exactly the German response will be. Yet observers report increased militarization of the South African border by newly formed Africa Shield. Many consider the German response to be self-evident. African chaos, typical. No one starts a war, or rather no one in his senses ought to do so, without first being clear in his mind what he intends to achieve by that war, and how he intends to conduct it. Harold G. Moore, the dominoes shall stop. So I'm assuming we'll get an event in quite a few days, giving us permission to intervene. Oh, definitely Supreme Court Justice. I mean, we can do that, I guess. We'll worry about that. Yep, there we go. As Boer rebellion rages on, international journals on the ground are reporting that German colonial panzer divisions have now begun to pour across the South African border in a rapid escalation of conflict. Forces of newly formed Africa Shield have already won several key victories, forcing the already stretched thin South African soldiers into retreating south in disarray. The OFN having expressed support for the South African regime for almost a decade, the feeling on the ground was captured by quickly spreading footage of a battle-bloody South African soldier, part of a convoy of soldiers retreating at Port Nolloth, who asked the camera the question many have been asking. Where the fuck are the Yankees? True chaos, but when will it end? Can we send volunteers now? Not quite yet. Oh, the Milorg coup in Norway. It's nice when you get a return on your investment. Beautiful. We'll funnel some money to the pro-OFN-minded politicians in Ireland. Funnel as much money as we need to get success there. And oh my god, this is complicated. I don't know. It's not looking good for South Africa right off the bat. Our nation in flames. Yeah, fuck. This morning's issue of the San Fran Chronicles featured a fairly prominent political cartoon printed far larger than most others are. Specifically, one of President Nixon on his hands and knees, blubbering as he kisses the boots of a goblin-faced, buck-toothed Hirohito and dries them using a dirtied American flag. The caption below simply reads, "The tricky dick kowtow." Words of Nixon's under-the-table negotiations with the Japanese after the IG and Shinano bombings has reached the public. The hawks of the media are having a field day with it. While the negotiations are indisputably legal, it nevertheless undermines Nixon's image as both a devout patriot who fights for evils of fashion across both oceans. The NPP has already started drafting advertisements mocking the deal in the anticipation of the '64 election, and the already hawkish public in California is eating them up. Despite California being his home state, Nixon's odds of electoral victory in November look to be more of an uphill battle than anticipated. He stopped a war, and this is how they treat him? Is there... I'm waiting for something. For some sort of... There we go. The time has come for the latest grandest battle against fascism since the Second World War. The last stand against autocracy abroad and worldwide. A second crusade against the forces of evil that force the free people of the world underneath their autocratic jackboots. With one fell swoop, we will stop the Nazis from securing a new foothold in Africa. For if we do not, surely the brutal invasion of our South African partners will only be the beginning. If Africa falls, next falls India. Then with the East secured, the Nazis will soon be in the Americas as well. At least that's the sentiment that every American general with a foot in the White House doors loudly shouted, but raided the Senate over, rallied the troops with, and harassed the media with, as seemingly every man who has ever held a gun has proclaimed the time for the final battle against the fascist menace. While many members of the RD party have seemed nervous about the situation, proposing some doubts about the domino theory is an immediate threat as proposed, or that entering war with direct servants of the Reich can end in anything besides a greater conflict, it's most surprising that several members of the NPP have stepped aside the aisle to agree. Leftists in the NPP have questioned what exactly the RD-dominated military establishment proposes any end goal in the conflict, and what they may have to deal with. Africa, even if there is some sort of victory with the far right of the party, has shown some suspicious hesitance to do battle with the fascists. Regardless, however, the president seems dead set on intervention in the South African continent, President Nixon seemingly hoping that a knockout punch in the Reichskommissariat will save his flagging administration and halt the impending impeachment vote. Goodbye, my darling. Hello, Kuraman. So we have the African adventure coming up. We'll get the Stinger technology. And I believe we can finally send some volunteers. We can only send one as of now. So we will go ahead and send Frank S. Benson Jr. in the helicopter division. And isn't there a focus group for South Africa coming up soon? Troops are on the way to join the struggle. Excellent. Operational success. Beautiful. There we go, the South African War. Domestic situation. Okay, South African War rages on, and we must do everything in our power to win it, lest the dominoes fall elsewhere. Many parts of our lands, however, are not so willing to go fight in some far-off land, and the longer we stay in the war, the more credence their words will have. And then we have domestic struggle. South African War is a struggle for democracy against the fascist colonies that would seek to snuff it out. Moreover, it's an opportunity to show the world that Nazis can be beaten, to give Germany a bloody nose. However, at home, those benefits aren't always clear. Coffins landing at Dover AFB, the nightly news broadcasting harrowing footage from the front, loudmouth protesters decrying our brave fighting men. These things add up. We need to be careful of how the war plays out at home. If we mismanage the war at home, the electoral blowback for our party could be disastrous. Right now, public discontent with the war is non-existent. So that's good. Let's do South Africa secured. Every morning, a gaggle of New York investors concludes a successful tour of De Beers diamond mines through the Transvaal. Every other week, a shipment carrying crates of newly stamped guns, factory fresh trucks, and 100 tons of ammunition leaves the port of South Louisiana for Cape Town's distant shores. Every other fortnight, a flight of C-130 cargo planes departs into the wild blue yonder for the complement of desert warfare, and Afrikaner-trained advisors in tow. For all intents and purposes, South Africa is now a member of the world's last concert of democracies. The OFN now shares its watch with around the Orange in Zambezi. Sir Graf now trusts a free world shall prevail, prevent war from imperiling the nation's survival. Pray that trust need not be tested. I guess we'll... Democracy in South Africa has been a faint memory dating back to before the Second World War. Colonial empires introduced the concept of natives, but these empires have since fallen under Nazi rule. Our last hope for democracy on the continent lies in the Republic of South Africa. We formed the OFN in order to protect these frail democracies, and we must take action against the advancing Germans of South Africa to survive. Unfortunately, our allies in OFN are currently preoccupied as Canada prepares to help democracy win out in England. This war has provided us a great opportunity to take the world stage from the fascists. We have to form a united front if we are to assist our South African allies, and to do this, we've decided to hold on OFN Summit. We must gather every democratic leader to discuss our strategy heading into this conflict. We must show the world that the OFN is dedicated to the cause of freedom. We need to rally the OFN. So this is where our focus tree changes. I'm not really worried about this then. Let's do our sacred duty. The OFN is created to help the last remaining democracies on Earth, and the frail democracy in South Africa needs our help. With German invasion looming on the horizon, we need to enable support for the nation so that they do not succumb to the Reich. Time is running out for the final beacon of democracy in Africa. So let's see. How many troops do they have? 7 to 9, 11 to 16, 13 to 16. And how many do the Boers have? Oh, yeah, they have a lot of troops. Holy shit. There we go. Kickstart the media. Times change, and in our new American society, the president does not have as much influence over its people as he would like. We need to get our message out to the media to guarantee public support for the upcoming struggle. Our people need to know that we are defending a weak democracy that currently stands alone against the looming presence. We will have the newspaper printing propaganda every day if it means we'll garner support. There we go. Kickstart the media. There's not much we can do in South Africa right now, or anywhere really. Today, international observers have reported a seemingly violent victory for German garrison in Madagascar. Large convoys of trucks loaded with captured militiamen, partisans, and suspected collaborators and sympathizers, Jewish, natives, and others alike, were photographed and filmed on their way into the countryside, where their fate is unknown. Even despite the German victory, chaos still reigns in many parts of the country. Command hierarchy among the troops suffers greatly the further from the capital one goes, with revenge killings and attacks carried on unsuspecting civilians in villages, regardless of their true or suspected sympathies. It will take a great deal of time for the economy to recover, as well. The scars of war are never fully healed. The White House has issued a statement hammering Nazi tyranny and has declared its intention to double its efforts in combating global fascist terror. The bellicose rhetoric hasn't inspired any response of note from Germany or Japan, and whether the president's statement is true or not remains to be seen. For now, Madagascar will remain under foreign domination, its people exploited and oppressed under the name of the Third Reich. Another blow to liberty and the CIA. What are you going to do? Let's send over some equipment. Let's send over equipment, I think. Who do you want to do? Let's do a liberal option. Alright. It's time to slow things down. This is 7 o'clock news. Tonight's top story. The shocking images coming from the Nazi invasion of South Africa, the last democracy on the continent. In millions of households across America, the exact story was being aired from every single radio and television station as agreed at a high-level meeting between the media executives and the Nixon administration. We face a desperate struggle. A survival for the freedom in the face of Nazi tyranny. The Americans must know that in the face of totalitarian aggression, there can be no compromise. A haggard Prime Minister Sir de Villiers Graf of South Africa made a desperate plea for international intervention to the hearts of Americans. A snide question asking if said freedom extended to the Africans was edited out. By God, Walter, we can't sit this one out. We lost the last war, but not for lack of trying. What did Shakespeare say? A coward dies 1,000 deaths. The assembled panelists all nodded in agreement. The studio had been careful to vet everyone beforehand. There would be no peace nits on the airwaves today, and tomorrow, and the day after. It's just a war. Everyone says so. And this is a perfect place to go ahead and cut it here, ladies and gentlemen. Because, oh shit, we better head over here, I'm thinking. I'm gonna have to cut it here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content in the future, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. More uploads every weekday, as well as every Saturday. If you have any comments, feedback, concerns, anything of the sort, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get and appreciate any and all feedback you kind of might have for me. Let's just cancel these lines, try to get more equipment going. Okay, we need some... want to start building some anti-air. I'll get working on that right now. Anyway, if you have any comments, feedback, concerns, leave them in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get and appreciate any all feedback you might have for me. If you want to share, play games, I have a Discord down link below. If you want to send a few bucks my way, I have a Patreon. If you want to have a good old time and watch me do this sort of stuff live, I have a Twitch, all of which are down links below. Thank you as always for watching. Ladies and gentlemen, my name has been DB333. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.